My name is Jack Rome, and on behalf of the Center for Awakening, I'm glad to welcome you to Meet the Speaker, a live series with speakers from the upcoming 3-day online immersive conference, Awake in Stillness, The End of Dreaming, taking place from November 8th to 10th. This series is designed to give you a brief taste of the direct experience that you can expect from each session during the conference. Amoda Ma is a spiritual teacher offering a profound invitation to all of us who wish to embody the truth of awakened consciousness in the midst of everyday life. Her teachings are not affiliated with any lineage or tradition, yet the luminous truth expressed through these teachings is the same non dual understanding at the core of many spiritual traditions. She offers meetings and retreats to a growing global community and is the author of Embodied Enlightenment and Falling Open in a World Falling Apart. She lives with her husband, Kavi Jezi Hakaday, in New Mexico, and together they are the spiritual directors of the Amoda Ma Foundation. Amoda's conference session is titled Unveiling the Self. Her session will invite us to explore how the content of our experience creates the veiling of our original nature as unbounded awareness, and the subsequent sense of being a separate self as the source of suffering. She will discuss how we can facilitate the undoing of the veils of perception by meeting nakedly the life that is emerging through us, thus revealing the luminosity of being that is the foundation of freedom.
I think we can begin with a little guided meditation. It's more of a contemplation. So let's begin with eyes closed. So rather than trying to achieve any particular state or trying to push away thoughts or trying to do anything, instead, to allow awareness to simply scan the energy field. Awareness is simply the open space. The fact of awareness, the fact that we are aware. So just connecting with this for a moment, the fact that you are aware, and that this awareness is not located anywhere, but can move around. It can zoom in and zoom out, as well as being the field within which that zooming in and zooming out takes place. So let's not try to understand this too much, but just allowing awareness to land lightly on whatever is here in your energy field, in your direct experience. So let's say that awareness lands on thought activity. So becoming aware of thought activity. Allowing awareness to land lightly. It's a soft touch. It's not a hard focus. It's as if awareness is dancing lightly on the movement of mind, on the movement of thoughts like waves on the surface of the ocean. Nothing for you to do, nothing to get rid of, nothing to attain. And then allowing awareness to become aware of breath. The simple fact of breathing, like the ebb and flow of the tide. No need to change anything. Simply awareness, resting lightly. It's a light touch. Perhaps notice how different this is, the light touch, to a tight focus, a concentration. This is the undoing of the tight focus. There's no narrative here. There's no grasping or rejecting. Simply a light touch on what is. Breath coming, breath going. Breath rising, breath falling. And then allow awareness to fall into the belly. And again, a light touch. Perhaps there are feelings. Perhaps there are sensations. Perhaps there is stillness. Nothing to do, nothing to change. Just a light touch on what is. And then allow awareness to scan the whole body. Perhaps the hands, the feet, the back, the shoulders. Maybe the surface of the body. Maybe deep inside the body, the inner body. There's no narrative here. There's no fixating on a sensation. Simply a light touch. What does this mean? How does this feel? This light touch of awareness. And then again, notice how awareness is simply awareness. It can be aware of sensation, of thought, of feeling. It can be aware of mind, of body. It can be aware of energy. And then it can be simply aware of itself. Awareness, aware of awareness. Just notice. Is this awareness located anywhere? Is it localized? Is it fixed in time or space? Or is it unlocalized, unbounded, infinite, without an edge, without a boundary? Can you find a limit to awareness? Can you find a boundary or an edge? When awareness is simply resting as itself, as awareness. The open field. Open field of awareness. This is the infinity of being. And you, as a finite experience, you and the content of your life as a finite, localized experience takes place inside this open field of awareness, the infinity of being. Okay, in breath, out breath, opening the eyes. So, what's being pointed to here, this brief meditation, guided meditation, is that when we focus on the content of our experience, which is the default position, yeah, we are constantly experiencing the content, our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, the body, this happening, that happening, this circumstance, and so on. Then awareness is funneled in, zoomed in on the content, and we derive our identity from that. Yeah. If it's welcome, if it's pleasant, if it's uplifting or inspirational or whatever, then we derive our identity from that. We interpret it as something to do with us. I'm a good person, I'm a spiritual person, I'm a happy person, I'm a lucky person, I'm a blessed person. And when it's unwelcome and challenging or turbulent or intense or painful, whether that's mental pain, physical pain, emotional pain, then we derive our identity from that. I'm not so spiritual, I'm wounded, I'm not good enough, and so on and so on. And so, this constant interpreting of our experience, because awareness has got zoomed in and locked in, creates the self, the veils of self, I should say, the veils of perception through which we see reality. And what I'm pointing to here is the possibility, through very simply, although it's an ongoing journey, it's not going to happen just in one fell swoop, to meet our experience, to meet the content of our experience lightly, with a soft touch, which allows the veils to come undone. Obviously, I'll go into this in more depth in at the conference, but that's just to give a little flavor of the direction that I'll be going in.
Mm. Mm.
Because we often think, right, on the spiritual path as seekers, that it's the self that awakens. And somehow we become an awakened self. And that has all sorts of images about it. What that means, I'm perfect, or I don't feel anything, or I transcended the human experience, or whatever it might be, all variations. But it's not the self that awakens. It's the veils of perception that come undone, the veils that create the matrix of self, who we think we are. And with that comes resistance to what is. Resistance, rejection, or grasping, controlling, and so on, which creates a veil between us and reality, between perception and reality. So I'm speaking to the possibility of undoing those veils, not by any strenuous practice, but by a deep relaxation within, which facilitates the undoing of the tight knot of ego self, because ego is not a static thing, it's a constant process of interpretation and interference with our direct experience. Without interference, without interpretation, we can meet reality nakedly. And that nakedness is what we call awakening. But it's not the self that's become an awakened self. We've simply woken up out of the dream, out of the illusion that I am this, I am that, I need to reject this. I need to hold on to this. I need to, yeah, avoid this. Yeah, it's a very direct, pure meeting of reality.
Hakim Hamza is a spiritual teacher, author, speaker, and YouTuber. Driven by a profound yearning for something eternal that transcends limitations, Hakim immersed himself in diverse Eastern philosophies. Through his journey, Hakim has come to understand how spiritual truths can be applied to our everyday lives. He later found A Course in Miracles and the work of Ken Wapnick, who taught the Course. The Course has resonated with him more than any other teaching, and it has become his primary spiritual practice. In his book, The Eternal Within, he aims to explain the Course and share his insights from Ken Wapnick in a clear, structured manner that even newcomers can understand. So Hakim's conference session is titled Embracing Resistance, the Gentle Path to Non-Duality. His session will invite us into his teaching, where the teaching itself becomes a form of meditation, with his words coming alive in the listener, guiding them to feel and experience the spiritual truths he is conveying.
Most people on the spiritual path, unless you're really new to it, sort of have an intuitive feel that that there's another side to view things. You know, we have seen the spiritual teachers, whether it's live on a retreat or on YouTube or read the books, we know how it's supposed to look like. So we might feel like, oh, I've been on the path for 20 years. Here I am cursing out the driver on the fast lane, next to me. Or, why haven't I still transcended this or that? Why am I still preoccupied with my own inadequacies? Or I'm having these problems with my children. I'm worried about my mother that's having dementia or whatever, So as you mentioned, I studied Eastern non-Vedanta, all of that, a lot of teachings from India, and not to undermine them, but in a way, compared to A Course in Miracles, I felt that it was very much, this is what truth is and this is what illusion is. Just get to the truth. This is how truth looks. Go to it. Go to silence. Go to stillness. This is the ego. Don't be with the ego. More or less like that. So that actually takes a lot of discipline and hard training. It's doable. Nothing against it. But with A Course in Miracles, I found the teachings that sort of more or less meets me where I am, even within the dream, the illusion of duality. And it sort of could meet me even on things like relationships. As I said, my sense of inadequacies. How can I see another person that's sick or dying? How can I look at war zones? What does awakening have to do with all of this? When I'm not talking about from a philosophical view, because that we sort of know if you've been on the path for a while. I'm talking about on the level of feelings, on the level of having peace while seeing certain things happen, whether it's on a war zone or within yourself. As I said, you might have said, I'm 20 years in on this practice and here I am judging everybody like it's my first day on the spiritual path. So A Course in Miracles explains why you actually have to get into the topic of resistance and why you shouldn't be surprised that you're still judging. Because the spirituality is not about intellectual awareness of what truth looks like or what it's supposed to be like. Spirituality is in the end about letting go of our sense of self. We think that's all we have. It's in another way, sorry to be this dramatic, it's a way of dying, psychologically speaking. But that's from the view of our ego. But from the view of love and truth, it's letting go of something that's actually just a burden. It's letting go of pain. And it's all replaced by love. Now you can't, what I find one of the major things that's unique about the Course in Miracles is that at least it gives me the intellectual framework so I can learn to trust that even though I have all of this resistance, that I have a healthy respect for, because I now know the ego is not an easy thing to let go of. It gives me the reasons, the arguments for why I can be gentle and sort of trust the process. The implication of this is that we can actually afford to be gentle. But doesn't it say that I have an ego, I have to let go of the ego? Isn't, spiritual people, we can be very violent towards ourselves. I have to let go of this false self. I mean, the false self, I must change. I mean, this is all making the ego real, which is what the ego loves. It loves to analyze itself and fight itself. Why? Because then it's obviously substantial. So by that point, it's like the worst thing we can do. It is the worst thing we can do with the ego. What the ego cannot stand is gentleness. Is to say, this is what I got from Kenneth Wapnick, a major course teacher, who's not alive now, but he was around from the start, and from A Course in Miracles, that even though the ego is there, and all the resistance is there, what sort of helps us, propels us forward on the spiritual path, is to not be surprised by it, by the resistance and the ego. I love this phrase from Kenneth Wapnick. He said, "What else is new? I'm afraid of disappearing into the heart of God, where there is no sense of self." Right? Of course I'm afraid. What else is new? And with that, that doesn't sound dramatic. That sounds, peaceful. That doesn't sound serious. I have to get through, I have to transcend the ego. That sounds like something you're already transcended the ego by then. The ego doesn't get that surprise from us that, oh, I need to do something. It actually gets indifference from us. That's the worst thing for it. So even though we know we have an ego still, we're still holding on to the self, by learning not to make it so personal, and even in a sense, don't even say that you want to transcend the ego, because then it's still making it real. Just sort of know what it's doing. That's what the Course is. It tells us a lot about how the ego works. So when it comes up, we're not surprised. That means we have to get into some dark stuff about the ego. But once we know about it, even if it's just intellectually, it all starts intellectually. Then when it comes up, we can say, oh, I know what I'm doing. But here comes the great point with the Course. It's not about what your ego is doing. It's about how real you make it. And if you feel guilty about the ego, who wants to transcend the ego? Somebody who feels guilty for having it. Guilty might sound like a big word, but if you say, oh, it's not good, I have an ego, from that standpoint, it doesn't work. You have to meet it, sounds strange, with a sense of love. Not that you would necessarily love something that can be quite vicious, actually, but love says this ego has no effect. It can't change my love or peace. Even though I was with the ego, I recognize it as just a mistake. I'm not going to make it a sin. And if I have an ego, everybody else has an ego. So we're the same in that sense too. And how isn't that sort of, in a way, an experience of love too? I know that my call for truth, everybody else has it. I mean, with friends in a way, in that sense. So and if I see somebody acting out of an ego, I know that's my call for truth as well. So I don't, as I've been saying, don't make your own ego real, but that goes for everybody else too. Don't make their egos real. Yeah. So to sort of wrap this around, I want to say again that once again the course is A Course in Miracles is very intellectual. That might not be something for everybody, but if it is, and if what I have been saying or Ken Wapnick or other course teachers have been saying sounds something that resonates with you, know that you will learn a lot about the ego. And even though that might be some mental gymnastics, learning the concepts, and there's 2 levels to this whole thing. If it sounds like something for you, I would say the benefit is so great because the Course in Miracles meets you even if you have the biggest ego outburst or if the lowest of the low to the highest of the high, or if you feel like, oh, I am complete stillness. No matter where you are, it's a very gentle teaching. Never have so little been asked and so much been given. But I could say this too, that if you want to make the most out of A Course in Miracles, it's good to say, I actually do have an ego, to not pretend. Jesus, who wrote A Course in Miracles through Helen Schuckman, he knows full and well about our egos, so we can't sort of cheat him. So it's very good to make the most out of A Course in Miracles, to say, you know what, I have an ego, and you have to sort of embrace that. The more you can embrace that and not feel guilty about it and not be shameful about it, the more you can actually use this teaching. Yeah.
Shakti Katarina Majai is a spiritual guide and author known internationally as one of the most authentic and profound voices in contemporary spirituality. Shakti offers an inner technology for dissolving the contraction of suffering that traditionally accompanies each of our lives. Her invitation is to come to the space of inner peace and unconditional love, which resides at the heart of us all. Shakti's conference session will invite us to experience non-duality not merely as a philosophy, but as valuable, embodied, everyday experience. We will inquire from the spiritual heart, understanding this presence is always in us, welcoming everything without judgment. But why should we stay present? Why should we live from this spiritual heart? And how do we remain present in our daily lives?
Of course, this is a little invitation to jump into a space that sometimes we think it's far away and is going to arrive after a lot of effort. That is just like being present to this moment and being aware of our own presence, being aware of this loving presence that is in the heart. And before going into a little experience, I would like to say that some people think sometimes that meditation is sitting cross-legged and stopping the mind or trying to be here. And instead, meditation flowers, blossoms in an everyday, moment by moment meditativeness that comes from being aware of what in us is aware. And this can happen any time of our day. It can be, when you wash your dishes, when you vacuum around your flat, or you drive, or, wherever you are, you can be present to what in you is aware. And this is valuable, as you ask, because we need really to rejoin our everyday life with its conflicts, contradiction, compensations, conundrum, with what are our spiritual ideals, because we might have very beautiful spiritual ideals of unity and inner peace, but it's not say that we are actually living them. So what I would like really to invite people in the session we are going to give and today is the importance of experiencing our spiritual life rather than just understanding it. So, for instance, right now, whoever is listening in this moment, you are, if you want, you can close your eyes if you are in a place where you can close your eyes, or otherwise just listen. And you can be present to your body sitting or standing, to any sensation is present in you, to any mental image might appear for you, a memory, a piece of conversation, a feeling, any sound that is present in your surrounding, any noise, can be the traffic, can be a bird chirping, a dog barking, a voice, my voice talking. And just be present to these experiences exactly as they are. You don't need to change them. You don't need to push them away. And then notice how there is a presence in you that is aware of your inner state, the mind, the feeling, the memories, the thoughts, and your apparent external state, my voice, any noise in your surrounding. Both these things, what you call your inside or yourself, and what you call the external world, are both viewed by this presence that you are. And please notice how this presence that you are is totally unbothered by any conflict might be present. Any kind of color is in the mind. This presence is here. It's neutral. It's you. It's in your heart. And it's always here. Whenever you want to look, it's here. It doesn't matter what's happening in your life right now. And this presence is here as things start, develop, and it's a constant of your waking state. It's like an embrace of your life. And it's one with everything. Even if it remains untainted by life, it's one with it. This presence can be the shore from which you can look at any storm in your life, inner or external one. This presence can be the safe harbor where to be anchored and view the mind, view its contradiction. There is no effort to find it. Just notice it. The mind might capture your attention with its ups and downs and confusion and dialogues, attachments. But this presence is here. And it doesn't need for anything to be different from what it is. So it's really something that will not require you to make any mental effort of understanding, any emotional change or transformation, but rather is going to be the clarity out of which you can see any real understanding coming in the mind is going to be the space in which any real alchemical transformation of emotion can arrive. This presence is one, is the same for every being, independently from their status or state of consciousness. It's where we are one. So that is the step number one of our journey. It's also the place where to stay in the entire spiritual journey until the very end of total dissolving of the egoic knots that led us into incarnation. So as you can see, it's very simple. Just do his life and notice what in you is present to it. And remain here all the time, every day. If you can do this, any kind of spiritual gifts need to arrive, will arrive. Understanding, transformation, clarity, gift of forgiveness, gift of compassion for your own suffering, for the suffering of people. Spontaneous letting go will happen because you'll see that you don't need to protect yourself, even from fear. You can meet anything from here. So that's the value. That's why we want to do it. And that's why even people that don't know they are called into spiritual life, they are. Just they are looking for this stability, steadiness in the mind, or in, can be a conviction, a fixation with an idea. Or it can be with their work or their family or whatever, anything. But the only thing that it's going to give us a steady point of view is this presence. And if we remain here, we could even jump beyond this. That is, this presence is I amness. We could even jump beyond it, and that would be awakening. But that has to happen when we are here.
Keith Kavanaugh is a non-dual teacher of A Course in Miracles, podcaster, and coach. Keith's 30-plus year journey with A Course in Miracles deepened after overcoming 8 long years of generalized anxiety disorder, leading to a profound awakening. He now shares his insights through a Facebook group, YouTube channel, podcast, and private mentoring. Keith's conference session is titled A Course in Miracles, an expression of the perennial philosophy through Christian and psychological symbols. His session will center on a way of looking, also known as forgiveness, to awaken and invite you to experientially shift your perception to that of the Holy Spirit, which is the truth of everyone and what you already are outside of thoughts and concepts in perfect stillness.
A Course in Miracles says we have one problem only. And there's one solution to all the problems that we think we have, because there's only one problem. And that is our misidentification as an illusory, separate self apart from the whole. And the Course sets out a formula that rescues us from this painful condition of separateness, and that's forgiveness. And forgiveness is, it's quite an old-fashioned word. It has connotations with Christianity and religion that can be quite off-putting for people. But the Course sets out forgiveness as the most powerful force we can wield. And it's not about one ego forgiving another ego. That's not what we're talking about. It is the means to remember what you are as presence, as what the Course calls the light of the world, the aware, alive emptiness of being that is only appearing as all the world and without ever ceasing to be itself. In the Course, it says, you are the light of the world with me. And the thing is, we're already that, but we are misperceiving ourselves as something else. We live in a virtual reality world that's made out of thoughts. And we need a way out of that. And the problem is that you cannot escape from a prison made of thoughts with thinking. So there's no way to think yourself out of a prison made of thinking. There's no way to resist your way out or seek your way out. There's one way out, and it's forgiveness. Because that's the one thing the imaginary, apparent separate self can't do, is to look without a story about what it's looking at. The imaginary separate self must fixate. It must fixate into good and bad and right and wrong and holy and unholy. It must do that. And so the Course says the way out of the entire activity of the mind is witnessing it without any judgment of it. And what you are will tell you of itself. That's the very simple message of A Course in Miracles. So, as you said yourself, Jack, I had an 8.5 year generalized anxiety disorder. It was awful. It was there from the moment I got up in the morning until I went to bed at nighttime and could finally be tired enough to sleep. And it got to a point where I just said to myself, there has to be another way. I'm making no progress spiritually. This is a half life. This is not any kind of a life that I want for myself. And I threw myself into this practice of forgiveness. And the Course says we have a split mind. So right now, you already are the emptiness of being that's appearing as everything and everyone. You already are that. I already am that. Okay, that is the truth of what everything and everyone is. One emptiness that's appearing as everything and everyone. And that is our identity in the Holy Spirit. And so all we have to do to know this self, this mind, is look at the other self, the activity of the mind. As the Course would say, thoughts you're not really thinking that don't really exist and mean absolutely nothing. The thoughts that pretend to be you. All we have to do is learn to look at them without thoughts about them, without labeling them, without judging them. And this allows you to know what you are as this emptiness of being. Because what looks at the unforgiving thing, which is the egoic identity structure, with total forgiveness, cannot be the unforgiving thing. And so we come home to this presence we are outside of thoughts. Course in Miracles says salvation can be seen as nothing more than the escape from concepts. Experiencing what I am outside of thoughts that cannot be soiled by thoughts. So I guess the point the Course makes is that it is the destiny of everyone to awaken. And the reason for that, it's not that it violates free will, but what the Course says is that tolerance for pain may be high, but it's not without limit. And eventually everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be another way. And as this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a turning point. And so this other way that the Course talks about is forgiveness. The Course talks about the other way, this like this. It says, it is remaining quiet, even in the midst of the turmoil you may make. So remembering we have a wrong mind and a right mind, we have a split mind, and the wrong mind is going to make a lot of turmoil. It's all of the thoughts that pretend to be you and that you think are your identity, and it's not. That's the turmoil. And all we have to do is learn a way to become still in the midst of the turmoil. We don't fight the turmoil. We don't try and fix or change or turn the turmoil into something else. We learn to become quiet in the midst of it. The Course says, forgiveness is still and quietly does nothing. It offends no aspect of reality, nor seeks to twist it to appearances it likes. It merely looks and waits and judges not. So this forgiveness, it doesn't seek to twist what the mind is doing into something different. It merely looks in a specific way. It looks without labeling what it's looking at. It looks without judgment. It forgives the activity of the wrong mind. It accepts the activity of the wrong mind with total non-judgment. And the minute you look at the thing that can only judge with no judgment, you are not the ego anymore. You may be witness to ego patterns, ego conditioning playing out in the mind, but there's no longer an identity in it. You are what's looking at that with no judgment of it. And A Course in Miracles calls that the miracle. Now, the big difficulty, once you've had an awakening, this is such a simple thing. This is such a straightforward, easy, simple thing. But what makes this tricky until you do it is that everyone is trying to do something. Everyone's trying to do something to awaken. Everyone's trying to become something. Everyone is trying to reject the present moment in favor of a better moment in the future. And that's the trap. And so A Course in Miracles says this in chapter 18. It is this that makes the holy instant so easy and so natural. Now, the holy instant is just remembering what you are. That's not a separate self. That's not an insane voice talking to itself in your mind that pretends to be you. So it is this that makes the holy instant so easy and so natural. You make it difficult because you insist there must be more that you need to do. You find it difficult to accept the idea that you need give so little to receive so much. And it is very hard for you to realize it is not personally insulting that your contribution and the Holy Spirit's are so extremely disproportionate. You are still convinced that your understanding is a powerful contribution to the truth and makes it what it is. Yet we have emphasized that you need understand nothing. Salvation is easy. Just because it asks nothing of you, you cannot give right now. So what I really wanted to focus on in this taster and in more depth in the actual conference would be the thought system that the course sets forwards, which is incredibly helpful and useful, but also on what the course would call the simplicity of salvation, that there's so little asked of us. And we keep getting in the way by trying to do too much. All we're asked to do is learn a way of looking at the activity of the mind, which doesn't label it, which doesn't judge it, which doesn't form an opinion on it, which simply accepts it exactly as it is and forgives it. And so, by way then of a taster for people to play with, just for now, what I would like you to do is maybe just call to mind all the somersaults and all the gurus and the books and everything else, and you're mad chasing after enlightenment and what do I do and how do I do it? Yeah, just let's forget that for a moment. Yeah, we've all been there. um, yeah, I had a long time on that road. Um, I just learned how to forgive, and that's what I want to teach you now. So right now, there is a whole load of activity happening in the mind that you mistake for yourself. It's not you. Okay. A Course in Miracles tells us in lesson 4, these thoughts do not mean anything. Lesson 52 says, I have no private thoughts because there's no such thing as a separate self. I have no private thoughts, but it's only private thoughts of which I am aware. What can they mean? They do not exist and they mean nothing. And the problem is we're in here thinking these thoughts mean something. And now we're going to use thinking to try and sort out the problem of thinking. Okay. And that's what confounds everyone trying to do something. And that's what the passage I read is about. And so instead, we're just going to forgive. So in this moment, whatever your mind is doing, give it permission to do that. Accept it totally and completely and allow it to be exactly what it is right now. And any thoughts that you have on what you need to do with your mind and how you need to fix your mind and how you need to change your mind, that's not you either. So give those thoughts total permission to be there. Surrender to the fact that they do appear to be there. Allow them to be there. Forgive the fact that those thoughts are there in your mind. Whatever the mind is doing, and whatever thoughts think they should do about it, and looking forwards into the future, that any of that has anything to do with you. Any thoughts that anything that the mind is doing has anything to do with you, forgive them being there as well. Just welcome them. Just give them permission. Let go of any fight. Let go of all doing. Just totally forgive whatever your mind is doing in this moment. And in that forgiveness, peace will arise in your mind. It has to. And if any more thoughts come in, trying to wage war on the peace, forgive them being there. Do nothing with them. Whatever your mind is doing, give it permission to do exactly what it's doing. Totally forgive it. And what will arise is a felt sense of being. An alive, aware, empty, peaceful beingness. That is the truth of who you are. And you get to be this in the midst of whatever madness your mind is doing. You don't have to do anything with the thoughts and the feelings and everything else that's going on in your mind. You get to be this peace in the midst of the turmoil your mind makes through total forgiveness of the turmoil. And the minute you forgive, instead of fighting, instead of judging yourself, instead of beating yourself around the head with your non-duality book, the minute you forgive it, that's all. Do nothing else except totally surrender to whatever the mind is doing. There's a peace comes. You are this peace. And ask yourself, is there anything wrong with this peace? Is there anything to need in this peace? Is there anything missing in this presence I am? It's a non-judgmental presence. Has this presence that I am ever been wounded? In this presence that you are, this is what everything is. This is what everyone is. In behind thoughts that are not real thoughts that no one's really thinking. This is the substance of all the world. Course in Miracles says, the forms, the broken pieces seem to take me nothing for the whole. This one beingness that you are is what's appearing as everything. Zen Buddhism would say that emptiness is exactly form and form is exactly emptiness. So that's the two non-duality approaches side by side. So there you go, Jack. That's my contribution as a taster to awakening to the truth of what we are through the simplicity, total forgiveness.
We really hope you'll join us at the Awaken Stillness conference. It'll be from November 8th to 10th for more direct experience teaching. And you can register for free at purepresenceconferences.com.